Millennials. Ooh-wee.
All right, so I think we're recording, but I'm here with Dr. Comer and future Dr. Amua, if he so chooses.
I choose it. I choose it.
But we are preparing. We're so excited. We get to present at ASCD's National Annual Conference. So we're grateful for that. But we're just talking through some things, and we thought we'd hit record because maybe it will resonate with you if you watch this. But Brent, I wanted to get your reaction, right? So we're talking a little bit about millennials and Gen Z recruiting and retaining millennial talent, specifically in school systems. But Augie and I found this meme, and just so everybody knows, if you watch this, I'm a millennial, Augie's a zennial, and Brent is a Gen Xer, Generation X. And in our presentation, we're going to unpack some data and common definitions. But what's your reaction to this meme? I'm going to analyze it again too.
I feel like that's my senior picture. I think, right? I don't know that I ever looked that cool with the cool necklace, but all those things, right? Is I push now 50 of realizing, man, how true that is. Maybe I wasn't, Justine, maybe I wasn't cognizant of it or aware of it, but boy, reading that scene, whether that was intended to be a joke or real, that mean whatever, but boy, that's me, right? That's indicative of my generation, I think.
Okay.
Hmm.
What do you think, Augie? What's your reaction as a zennial and zennial, right? You
So
both
as a
millennial
Zennial
and Gen X.
in the middle of the sandwich, the safe person, I would say, Dr. Comer, I honor your statement. This is amazing. Great reactions. But what I would be thinking in my mind is, I wonder if my millennial counterpart, Dr. Gonzalez, is thinking that this is a mean meme. This meme is mean. This meme is has assumptions connected to it. So those are the things that I grapple with. I don't really completely have a reaction to it. I really just think that it's a cool way to set this up and to look at, like, specifically, just what was happening in generations before ours. So
Yeah, I think, well, and I think from a cultural lens, it's important to denote everything is all about our perceptions.
yeah,
And so you have these core generations that still exist: baby boomers, Gen X, Zennials in between, millennials, which is also known as Gen Y or
yeah,
Gen Z, and then Generation Z, of course, is the other existing, I think, ages 4 to, I want to say 26 currently.
mhm.
Um, but I I don't know. I don't know what I think. I think it's interesting because obviously every generation is going to have a different perception, and we all as humans come to the table with our own biases, whether it's gender based, race based, ethnicity based, geographic context, class, and how we grew up, if we had money when we were growing up or not, different facets that lead themselves to having privilege, to have access to things, or not having as much privilege, which it's all important to consider. But I was also struck by, what do we really know about millennials? And Brent, you were saying something a little bit ago that really caught my attention about how you operate as a leader and kind of how you feel like your mental model has been ingrained in you. Can you kind of talk about that? Because obviously you see Gen X and baby boomers, they prioritize their desire for what's called ethical leadership, and then diversity and inclusion, and really asking questions and getting to know different perspectives other than your own, and probably sometimes at annoying levels saying, hey, could you give me feedback on this, is very much more important to my generation as well as Generation Z.
Yeah, I was curious too, based on the collaboration three of us have been doing. I would love to know, because to my point, when you see that, Justine, as for this talk representing that millennial generation, do you see that as ridiculous? Do you see that as funny? Do you see that as
The
absurd?
meme.
Yeah, the meme.
Okay. And that's a whole other thing, right? I think memes are very much millennial culture and a way of communicating on social media platforms, Gen Z as well. But it's almost a way of it's become a way of communicating, right? And connecting to go, oh yeah, we all think that's funny. I saw it and I thought, I mean, because my parents are baby boomers. They were both born in 1959. And I got a kick out of it because I'm like, I feel like my parents said some of this stuff. And then I'm also a first generation college grad, me and my two siblings. And I feel like I remember legit them saying this stuff. But then in the same token, if you want to go to college, you got to pay for it. So like there was like, there's a part of me that it's almost a bit upsetting. And I think about this often with Gen Z, going back to legacy, and a lot of what we're talking about in this talk with building your legacy, not only for yourself as a leader, but your organization. I think there's something to be said with thinking beyond yourself. And I do wonder with baby boomers and Gen X, what is that something that you grew up even thinking about? And even as an adult, Brent, have you had to intentionally start to think that way? Because I think very often, whether it's about the planet or and how we take care of the earth and those types of things, like, am I setting up our world to be, am I making decisions for my future kids and my nieces and nephews? Am I actually getting them in a better position to thrive?
Yeah, yeah. And the reason I ask is it's right. Our conversation always revolves back for me to what's my legacy, right? And two, what I had to so struggle with, and it was really difficult, but I'm so glad I got on the other side of it, was my generation. I felt like the person had to transform to fit the definition. Okay. So if my definition was assistant principal when I was 28 years old, I had to change me to fit what I knew as a working definition of assistant principal. So on as principal, so on as assistant superintendent, all those things. That there's got to be a shift in that, right? Because what I found working with millennials and really self-reflection and getting to know, the definition needs to modify to fit the person and not the person fit the definition, right? And that's a real generational thinking shift, in my opinion, right? Because my generation and older, it's you're defined by your title. And that title comes with a set definition that if you're going to be successful, quote unquote, if you have this title, you have to speak this way, act this way, think this way, do this way, all those things. It may not fit any of my strengths, Justine, whatsoever. So I guess, and I don't know if I'm answering your question, but is I want to know what you think of this, because we probably don't share the same definition. Often we don't, right? Generational, those definition shifts are so different.
Augie, what do you, when you see ethical leadership, talk about that, what that would mean for you?
That's the perfect, I'm so glad you asked that, because what I just heard was an example of ethical leadership, which was really, really adaptive, like an adaptive perspective on it. Brent, I feel like what you just talked about has so many implications to systems, transformation, thinking about things just a little bit different. It almost takes me back to some of the folks that I work with and I coach, right? I'm starting to see value in folks outside of their roles and responsibilities. And I wish they had the permission to access that power. Wow. I wish they had the permission to say, you know what, like, I am great in the community. I am great when it comes to inspiring and motivating kids and staff and security and facilities, right? How can I do more of that? And I think that's the thing that millennials, and especially the next generation coming, Generation Z, they're all about that, because when you grow up inundated with different information, literally, if I pick up my cell phone right now and look at Instagram, Instagram will make me feel like I've got to do 10 things. Like, let's just be quiet. It's kept like, seriously, like, even in terms of like social media strategy for us in business and all of that, I keep thinking,
talk through that. What goes on? Talk through that a minute.
No,
what goes on?
How do you continuously post when you're a millennial without a ton of insecurity? Because I'm gonna tell you, like, you look at all the things happening, all the things people have access to, and all the things people can do. Because the reality is that like there are different things that people can actually do.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
how can you get that the permission and the support sometimes in operating like that? Because if you do operate, you could be operating in a way that's very beneficial for your organization. But again, you know, if I get a position like a chief academic officer, and it's about me making sure that the data metrics are hitting one thing instead of maybe potentially innovating and doing some experiential learning stuff, whatever the case is, maybe trying to re-engage teachers by doing a different sort of whatever the case may be. It's about trying to figure out where is this person's juice and how do we let them use it, you know?
Well, I think often what happens too, so something that really came to me, and I'm, of course, not to fit into the millennial stereotypes, I'm Googling something on ethical, right? Because I want to unpack what does ethical really mean. So one of the things it says pertaining to or dealing with morals or the principles of morality pertaining to right and wrong in conduct. So when you break down the fact that this says dealing with right and wrong in conduct, as a millennial, the way how I read that is you want me to fit into a box of somebody else's standard that they've already said is right or wrong and how they've defined it. And that is the main difference between this ethical leadership and why there's often these cultural clashes between leaders who are in baby boomer or Gen X and then millennial and Gen Z. Millennial and Gen Z, very much you look at where it says diversity inclusion. Well, often people think D&I and they think, oh, great, Justine's part Latina. Great, we've got some diversity on our team. No, it's about, do you see all the facets? Exactly what Augie was saying. Do you see all the facets of who this person is outside of, well, this is Dr. Comer and we hired him as superintendent and he's going to do what's right and wrong. Well, right and wrong are subjective terms. And what might be right for you might not be right in my world based on cultural context.
Well, even sorry, to your point, even sorry to interrupt you, but even when we start talking, just let's define each one of definition of ethical leadership. Don't Google it, just define it, right? We probably being different backgrounds, different generations, a lot of differences in that independent, non-Google looked up definition, right? So in leadership though, if I'm leading, and I know this to be true, like in my organization, millennials are becoming my driving force in school reform, school rule, getting things done, right? That's my driving force. So Justine, if I've got to figure out what do millennials, when they say ethical leadership, what's their definition? Does their definition include, they don't want to just be barked orders to, they want to feel like the leader listened. The leader included them in stakeholder conversations. The leader then meditated on and pondered their thoughts before a final decision was given, instead of just boom, react, go do it. Boom, react, go do it. And one of the things Gen X, right, to a point that I really struggled with, I had to get over when someone questioned a decision on the why. Why did you make that decision? Why are we doing it this way? I would have never dreamt in my younger years of ever questioning a superior of why. Now, I might grumble with the fellas in the teacher's lounge or scream it as I listen to Bob Seger on the way home or whatever. I might question, but that would have never crossed, because I would have saw that as so disrespectful to do.
Interesting.
You know what I'm saying? So a
Yeah.
lot of the millennials, the really good ones that are my movers and shakers and really want to do things right and well and redefine school or whatever, they're my question askers. And to them, I think I had to decide that's the best form of flattery. When my millennials or whoever in my organization start asking me good pointed questions on the why, it's because they care. It's not because they're trying to catch me in something I did wrong.
That's right.
It's to make me to make me better, to make their organization better. And for them to get buy-in, they need commitment too.
Yeah, I want to see how does it connect to me so that I can also make sure I message it, so that I can make sure I internalize it.
And do you feel like, as the millennial representative on this talk, don't you feel like my generation was all about just buy into it and do it. Just buy in.
Yeah, and that was a struggle, right? So my last role, I was a superintendent over 10 small high schools, alternative ed programs. And the person I reported directly to I was part of the executive cabinet, but the person I directly reported to, he was I believe 60-year-old man. And so he was a baby boomer, right? That was a continuing thing of, we're just going to do it this way and you just need to accept it. And so when it comes down to it, I think especially for millennials and Gen Z, when it comes to working in schools, if you are still a superintendent, and I say this with peace and love, but if you are still a superintendent or a principal, right, who's leading lots of teachers, and you are operating in such a way that you expect to just say something and it's going to be accepted as gospel truth, and you have not engaged people authentically, if you haven't given them the space and created the space where it's safe for them to ask questions and understand, then you are continuing to set yourself up for retention issues. And we know that that's an issue in our profession right now. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
But here's the tricky part though. I think folks have researched things like retention, things like culture issues, and they have started to make some adjustments in terms of like leadership practice, change management, that kind of thing. The thing is, what is your intention in terms of deciding to be inclusive?
Right.
You know, like, are you really trying to access the power that people really have to make your organization great and to make your legacy skyrocket and live? Because sometimes, you know, we go through the motions. Like, we go through the motions.
Or is it performative?
Correct.
Is it performative? So you can say, well, I actually had a superintendent say this to me recently. I already made my decision. I'm just going to go through the like pretending to survey or ask questions so I can say that I did it. And and you wonder, well, what would be then what would be the point of that?
Well, and guys too, you know, one of the things that is so frustrating, and I don't know that it's fair to say it's just rural. I know it's prevalent in rural, right? Is this mindset of let's just survive. That's our goal, is just to survive the moment, the day, the school year, whatever, just to survive. My goodness, why are we choosing that? If we're going to thrive instead of survive, we've got to see each other different. We've got to change our mindsets. We've got to lead differently, and we've got to follow differently. If we don't, survive's the best we're going to get. I would argue if you're just looking to survive, you're not evolving, and evolution leads to extinction, right? So thrive leads to continuance. Thrive leads to, we're back to legacy. Thrive builds your legacy, right? And I think, I know it, again, aging myself, turning 50 and kids that are 17 and getting ready to leave the house and all those kind of things. I'm really concerned about that, you know, and I hope a healthy degree. I'm fueled by that. I'm pushed by, man, your days in your professional seat are closer to the end than they are the beginning. So what's the legacy going to be? And everything you guys are saying, and I know some of the work you two have been doing, thank you. You guys are addressing that to a T. You're addressing it. So both of you, man, you know I love you, but man, I can't thank you enough for the work you guys are doing.
Likewise. And thank you, Dr. Comer, for letting us talk with you a little bit today. Hey, if you haven't, go to ASCD and register and attend our session. Thanks. This was just a little snapshot. You know, we're practicing.